Hey, Southern Hancock. I just wanted to give a shout out to 5th and 6th grade teachers to go a little bit deeper into what it looks like in the flow of a lesson and just some of the components that we shared with you in our presentation. One of the things I wanted to point out in your review, one of the things you're going to notice is this 3-part lesson. All of your Indiana academic standards are noticed over here on the right-hand side. And also in this 3-part flow of a lesson of a warm-up and what we do in the focus to really move the math along with a couple of activities. And then I wanted to share too how we close it down with the practice, how that's really different than what other curriculums do. And we do that through an activity or a game. And so anytime there is mention of a specific Indiana academic standard, you're going to find it blended in the flow of a lesson. It's not going to be something extra outside of it. And it's really going to help make sense for students because at that time in the acquisition of integrated standards is now where we're lifting up that extension to meet your Indiana academic standard. It is going to greet you with today's lesson and have all these cool things on the right-hand side to support your instructional planning. But I wanted to show you where to find that e-book online. So using your main menu, you're going to scroll down to where it says that e-book. And we're just going to open this up really quickly. Now, by launching this, I wanted to hop in to a specific lesson. We're going to look at 6th grade, Unit 4 on algebraic expressions. And notice this double page spread. It's going to give you the flow of your unit, which is about 1 month. You'll be able to see all of your Indiana academic standards. Over on the right, it gives you the major work and focus for the specific unit, as well as where you've been in the math and like where you're headed. These pages here support your day in review. One of the things I like to really point out is that even at 6th grade and 5th grade, we're still wanting to know what the fluencies are for our grade. So you're gonna be able to see that highlighted in red, as well as just the clarity around, okay, this is where we have our spiral part of our lesson. This is where we have our rich discourse in math talk. So these pages at a glance really help with that planning. Now notice there's blue lessons, which are the regular, the green, which is an open response. These are performance tasks. So we're not waiting to the end of the unit to teach that. It's part of the instruction for that specialized lesson. And then you're also going to notice an end of unit red lesson, which is 2 days long. But in these pages, it's going to help you organize all your materials, as well as not leaving the end in mind to question. You're actually going to have all of those learning targets of what's expected in that flow and sequence. The virtual learning community, I'm actually going to show you some footage in a second of the flow of a lesson that I took from this website. It's so cool because all the teacher support for planning a lesson, as well as seeing hundreds of teachers in action, is going to be on that click under PD on our platform. So that's a really cool connection to other educators that are also using everyday math. Now, these pages is where it gets real. This is where you're going to see the spiral in action. And because we're in Unit 4, you're going to notice a couple of things. You're going to notice the color coding of the orange, which is where we are now. That blue is where we have been with that specific Indiana academic standard. And so it helps you again see that coherence in another way. Whenever you see that little check mark that's listed there, that tells you that on this day of instruction, you actually have an assessment learning target. So you can see sometimes we're working in the standard as part of the whole story of today's learning, but the check marks tell you when you are going to be observing and noticing that success. The other feature I want you to notice is the star. The star is telling you what level or portion of the standard that you are expecting mastery of. Because these standards were written on learning progressions, some of them take time time to really get through and learn with deep understanding. And so that will also communicate to you right below when the full portion is being mastered. So it gives you all those layers of clarity so that you can go, oh, okay, what I'm looking for is this portion, and I'm not worried because it's expected to be mastered at this specific unit. Now, in this example, it is mastered in Unit 4, and so is this one. So I'm going to be paying very close attention to make sure that my students have that portion completed. But if I go to the next page, here's an example where it's showing you're done teaching the full portion of the standard in Unit 6, and so on. There are a couple of pages, and I'll open it back up to the double page spread just so that you can see these bite-sized professional learning opportunities to help us think about, oh, what is the content? Like what's happening within the math? And if I go to the next page, you're also going to see the same kind of support for the process standards. So we aren't just focusing on the what, we're actually helping teachers see, oh, hey, when we are processing, because we know that's what makes learning stick over time, here's what it looks like and sounds like to include those embedded practices. Another feature I like to point out by zooming in, see where it says GMP? You're going to see that little feature throughout the lessons because it's telling you we're working on the goal for the Math Practice 7. And we are the only program that really pulls in that vibrancy so that you know what portion also of the practice standards that you're working on. And all the questions in your teacher lesson that follow this GMP or goal for the math process standard is going to really pull out the habits of being a mathematician for your students. And because right now we're actually looking at an overview that I kind of shared, the part 1, part 2, and part 3 of how the lessons work of your lesson, what you'll notice is right to the very right of it, it's always going to give you differentiated options that help with that. Something readiness that you might need to double dose before students engage in today's lesson, but also if they're right on track and following along, there's a way to enrich that learning. And then we just know sometimes we need extra practice, so you're going to have that. What I want to point out is that the rigor of these differentiated activities is not reduced. The way they're engineered is just allowing another way to enter into that content. Now, one of the cool things about working and teaching with everyday mathematics is the way that it helps students become thinkers. And so I wanted to highlight the flow of the lesson looking at an activity called the banquet table. And what you're going to notice is that students are really working on this idea of analysis of patterns and how to find out what would come next. And they're going to do this through a real world situation where they're putting together tables at a banquet. And what students start to unpack is like this expression and using variables to explain the pattern of what happens when you put a table next to another table and you lose a seat at the table. And so let's take a look at this together. If you would like, you can follow along in your teacher edition. This is 6th grade lesson 4-8, and we're in the warm-up. And this is about 5 to 6 minutes long to kind of prime their ideas and brains around noticing and looking for patterns. So let's listen in to where we are in this scaffolded approach.
Solomon, what do you think?
7.5, 9, 10.5.
Agree, disagree?
Agree. It goes by 1.5.
Oh, it's increasing by 1.5 every time. How are you guys figuring out if it's increasing by 2 or 4 or 1.5? How are you finding that pattern so quickly? Ayana?
Well, one way is to do the range. Well, sort of like the range, but subtract the numbers.
So finding the range, the difference from the beginning to the end, and then dividing it into pieces. That's a really cool strategy. Did anybody else think of that? Yeah, Sasha, you're thinking it that way too?
No, I would actually.
You had a different strategy. What did you use?
So for me, what I used was I could kind of tell that it was 1.5 1.5 because 3 goes to 4.5 by 1.5 because 3 plus 4 equals 4. So I kind of used addition in a way.
So you're like looking at how much more to get from one to the first term to the second term?
Yeah, but then you keep just adding it.
So, okay, so the first one? 3 to 4.5. I added 1.5, and let me check and see if that works again for the next set.
And so now we're taking the math somewhere. Now we're going to be charged with a mental math activity where students have to think a little bit deeper because the pattern isn't as clean and neat.
You want to know?
Yes.
What, did you guys agree with her?
Yes.
What do you think would come next then?
1/6
And
1/7.
the numerator is increasing by 1 every time. Is the difference between them the same?
Yeah.
Is the space between 1/2 and 1/3 the same as the space between 1/3 and 1/4?
It's more like visual.
Yeah.
You can see
But
it.
the number's getting smaller and smaller.
I want you to talk to your partner about that. Is the space between 1/2 and 1/3 the same as the space between 1/3 and 1/4? 4, 6, 8. There was even spacing each time. I was increasing by 2. When I have 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/5, is the spacing between these numbers equal? Is it equivalent?
Because you didn't start from the 1. You didn't start from the
Okay,
1.
I'll even start with 1, 1.
No, it's still not even.
Still not even? Is the spacing equal?
No.
Oh, the spacing changes, so I'm going to have to look sometimes for different kinds of turn. And start working on the math message. You may work together on your math message, but as you're working, I want you to be thinking about how you're thinking.
So now students are given a charge to solve a math message, which is an invitation to now take a closer look to discern a pattern or a structure. So they're going to start to generalize the structure in order to extend the pattern and answer the related question provided. Let's take a listen.
So it's now 2 patterns. One is because you can like add 2, and then you could like do the first one is 3, and then add like
So do you think there's different ways of looking at this problem and how it grows?
yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
At first, so Courtney, she said she did it like she got it one way, then I got it the other.
Yeah.
And then we turned out to get the same answer.
So just like we've been talking about equivalent expressions, sometimes when I write things that look different, they actually have equivalent values. I wonder if we could prove if they have equivalent values. Even algebraically, once we have those letters in there, now that we know distributive property, I think we're going to be able to do that. Take a look. So I gotta go back and say, well, why doesn't that make sense? Bella, what would you add?
Well, what also helped me is that I realized that for the expression and the train number, so say for train number 2, it took, it added +1, and then in train number 3, it added 2. So I knew that the train number would always have to minus that 1.
You looked at a relationship between the train number and the number that was being added. And you noticed, you repeat what you noticed one more time, because I think it's really important.
Now there's a chance to go deeper into what's happening in the math message. Sharing out solutions and strategies is key to being able to generalize on their own for the next task they do.
What strategies did you use to prove that they are equivalent with one another? Yeah, Sasha, what did you and Ayana do?
So we replaced n with a number, and we replaced it with 9, and then we added 3 plus 9, and we got 12 minus 1 is 11.
So if this is true, it should work for any number. So they picked 9 because they have picked 37.5.
Yes.
-42.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's see if it works. So they replaced and they substituted n for 9. Did I substitute correctly?
In your teacher edition, you're going to see the banquet table open response task that students are now ready because of that background that we built. And for you, the teacher, notice it gives you sample examples of what kids would say, as well as a way to differentiate right in the flow of the actual lesson.
The drawing, they are planning a party at Costanza's banquet hall. The drawings show how Costanza's hexagonal tables fit together to form long banquet tables. One guest sits on each side in the drawing. Each hexagon is a table and the dots are guests. The banquet hall has a total of 19 tables that fit together in one big long line. Okay? What is the maximum number of guests they could have at the banquet? If there's 56 people, how long will they need to be? Okay? I would like for you to work on this independently.
Okay. Yeah, so I did 19.
Where did the number 19 come from?
Like
How many total tables? Okay.
And so then I saw that like on 3, so there'd be 3, and then you could fit 6 people on one side. Yeah. And so that's.
So for 3 tables, you could fit 6 people.
And so then I thought that because there's 2, so
Oh.
the amount of tables times 2 would be how many people could fit on one side, and so then you'd have to add that number again to see how many tables could fit on both sides,
Wow.
and then you would add 2.
That's a really neat way of thinking about it. I wonder if you can think about it algebraically and say, how could I do this for any number of tables? I think that's a really unique way of thinking about it, Maggie. I think it's a good strategy. Because you're telling me a lot of things that you're doing, but I can't tell.
And so the lesson does continue. The full version is actually on the virtual learning community if that's something you want to check out. But most importantly, I wanted you to see that student-centered approach, how there's multiple ways to attach that problem, because the next step of the lesson is to go in deeper with the multiple ways students solved it and to talk about the mistakes, to really celebrate them and also lean in on the ones that are the strategies that are more efficient. And this is the way that Everyday Math believes we are building the student for the future, to build agency at the same time along very engaging tasks that are meaningful to students. Okay, so I hope you check out a couple of the lessons. If you wanted to teach that banquet table, you can find it in your samples, of course, but also by navigating Unit 4 and then scrolling down to lesson right here, the banquet table will repopulate what you're noticing in your teacher center. It's going to give you expanded notes down here, what standards you're working on for your Indiana academic standards, as well as digital insight to planning your lesson. It's just another way to see the content. And you can see by hopping into the warm-up or even the focus, if I were to click right here on the open response, it would repopulate some online directions for ease of use for you, the teacher. As well as going back to the main menu, maybe you wanted to actually present using the presentation slides. Using this click will open up the flow of the presentation pieces. This is where the games are listed if you wanted to try out some of the digital practice across K through 6th grade content, the skill builders. But just notice, even within these games, by clicking top it, they're going to also be differentiated. So be sure to check those out and play them with. And if you wanted to just do a quick digital check of all the resources that complete your teacher package, by clicking the ebook, it will allow you to see everything at a click. As we put this overview to a close, I wanted to show you the Student Center by using the main menu and what we have here, the connected icon. It will populate you back to the front page where then you can yourself review what it looks like from the student perspective. So by clicking the student edition, it's going to open up that platform. And this is where through Clever or Canvas, the students are going to get that icon and be able to log in. The way the border works, those same games from the Teacher Center are here. Check out the interactive tools such as the Sketchpad and the little videos that really support strategies for students. Now, those are in the flow of a lesson for a student, they're embedded. But the e-tool kit is very thoughtful. You're going to notice every tool possible that you can think of for students that they might need to solve a situation task, such as even playing some of the games with social distancing. You're able to pull those out and, of course, let them roll. You also have backgrounds for think mats and consolidation tools that allow kids to represent their thinking using some of these, like student diagrams, for example. Pull these out. You can model those whole group. Families love the everyday math at home because it gives them just-in-time support of what the math is for the unit, as well as the vocabulary and strategies that we're working on in a very friendly language way. Opening up the ebook is the last thing we're going to talk about. It is the reference book. By clicking that, this is a unique piece to everyday math because what it is, when students are not working with you and they have a question about like their math boxes practice, for example, it's going to give them a page number. And when they populate that, it's going to give them a step out example, like this happens to be a video tutorial. And sometimes it's interactive pieces where the kids can actually try out the example for real. So I hope this video was helpful, kind of showing you some specific things for your grades. But at any point you guys have questions, please don't hesitate to reach back out, even if you want to do a quick Zoom. So thank you for listening and have a great day, you guys.